What is up, everyone? As you can see, it's Christmas time, or Christmas is just around the corner, so got a live tree there. But today we're gonna install curtains. As you can see, we got some of the sofas in, and we got a brand new rug here. This was purchased from At Home for 200 bucks. It's 8 foot this way by 10 foot this way. It's a pretty nice rug. It matches everything. It matches the walls. As you can see, we have all those painted as well. If you are interested in any of the renovation stuff, definitely look at those videos and you'll see the upgrades as they become available in the video stream. But today we're installing curtain rods and curtains over there. So let me show you how to install these and see what it's all about. So before you purchase your curtain rods or your curtains themselves, what you need to do is measure your window size. So you want to measure from here to here, and then you want to measure from the top of your window sill, unless you like them to hang down. You could adjust the brackets out to accommodate that, but it's totally up to you. But what you need to do is measure from the window sill up to the top, and then find a curtain that will fit within that range. So if you don't want to go shorter, because you know from here to here's the shortest you could go, so you got to go the next size up. So once you measure this, if you find out that there's curtains that are 6 inches longer, you could adjust it up here. So you go a little bit taller on the window up here if you want them at the window sill, or you could leave them right at the top and then have them draped down. It's up to you. And then measuring them this way, you need to make sure that whatever this length is, they're gonna sell you a curtain that's flat. So if it says 36 inches wide, that's 36 inches if you lay it flat. Keep in mind, you're gonna have to weave these things through the pole, so it's not gonna be 36 inches exactly. They're gonna shrink a little bit on you. So if you're gonna come up short, you might need a third curtain just to take up the distance and kind of have them ruffled together. So keep that in mind, or get something that's a little bit larger that are 2 panels, and then you won't have to deal with that. So the curtain size for my windows is from this point to this point of the trim is 72 inches exactly. And then from this top to the top of that windowsill is 50 inches exactly. And so for the height, or the length they would call it, I got 63. I only need 50. So they're going to be a little bit longer. So I have the option to go up a couple of inches, which I'm going to probably do. And then I have the option to let them hang down, okay? Or I could lift them up higher. But the issue with lifting them up too high is you'll have this gap that's apparent just to bring them above the windowsill. So what I'll probably do is slightly lift them up and then have them just hang in front of the windowsill, okay? And I'll tell you why I picked these out. Then I got 52 wide each panel. There's 2 panels to a package. Sometimes they're sold in singles, so don't be taken on that. You might think you're getting a good deal, but make sure there's multiple panels. So 52 inches per panel, that's over 100 inches width. I only need 72, but like I said, you're gonna eat some up in the way they're gonna wave, when they're fixed to the rod, they're gonna have to weave in and out. So you'll lose some length there. So that'll fit in this area. The next thing you wanna do is determine your rod. Decide which one you would like. This is 1 inch in diameter for this rod. They're gonna have a few different rod sizes. I believe 5/8, 1 inch, 1.5 inches. One thing you need to know is how your curtains, once you pick your curtains out, how they're going to hang on your rod. Some of them have big old eyes. I think they're like 2-inch eyes. And that's what these are. And if you get a 2-inch eye and you get say 3/4 inch or say 1/2 inch rod, it's going to look, really tiny. So you want to match the rod to that. This is a 1 inch rod. These are 2 inches. So I'll have 1/2 inch of, or 1 inch of play in between the rod, 1/2 inch on each side, but it's going to favor one side. So you'll have a full inch gap. That's fine because you want them to be able to slide. Okay. That being said, you want to determine what rod you want, the look of it, the ends and stuff like that, but also make sure it fits your window. So they always give you 2 dimensions. So if this is 72, they might say the smallest size is 75 and it extends out to 100. This one here, I believe, extends out to 110 or something like that inches. And it goes as small as, I believe, 69 or something like that. So most rods will have this inner piece, which goes from a large diameter to a smaller diameter. And that's all you get as far as length travel, is doubling up the length of this. The reason why I didn't like that is because you're going to have this little step here. But since I got the longer one, I could connect the 2 larger diameters, these 2 together, and then put this in between. Okay, and then make it at the smallest distance as possible. And then I'll have a consistent 1 inch to 1 inch instead of 1 inch to 3/4 inches. So keep that in mind when choosing your rod. So the reason why I picked up these curtains and this rod is because these curtains were, I believe, $30, $29.99 or $39.99 each panel set. So 2 to a set. And I had to pick up 2 of those for both windows, of course, and then 2 rods. So a rod here and then this rod here. These were only 25 bucks. The majority of the rods that you're going to come in contact with are $50 all the way up in price. So getting the larger diameter will cost a little bit more, but Amazon was having a good deal, and that's why I picked up these. So they were cheap. If you ever want to change them, they're not going to break the bank, but at least there's something to hang your curtains without going over budget. So since the price was a factor, buying both of those basically determined, the sizes that were available for both of them. And surprisingly, this larger rod, this 120 or whatever the length was on this rod, because it was longer, you would think it's more expensive. But what ended up happening is they were running a sale, and this length was actually cheaper than the shorter one. So might as well get the better setup. Before attempting to mount any of this stuff, use your instructions. They basically explain everything you need to know on how to mount it on your instructions. So the details are right here. You might have different curtains, you might have different rods, you might have a different setup, you might not have wood beams, you might have steel beams. So there's an abundance of different vents that could play out. So make sure you reference the instructions and the equipment that they provide you before attempting to do anything. So what you're given is a little cap that's on the end of the ball, whatever design you get, to protect the threads. And there's a thread on one end, and basically you screw that into there. So the nice thing about this 3-piece one is, as you can see at that end of the rod, there's a ball in. I mount it. Then at this end, the inner tube, they allow you to put the ball in on this one, just so that way you could get the shortest distance. Or you could attach this onto here and attach the ball in onto, so this one would slide into there, and you could attach it to this end to extend it. So you have options. It's totally up to you how short you need it. So if I need it this short, I could just attach it directly onto this end, the inner telescoping area, and then you have that end to extend it. So since my window isn't long enough to accommodate this pole and this pole together, I'm gonna have to just use that inner pole for now. But in the future, what I could do is take a tubing cutter, the ones that you clamp on, you wrap them around and they cut the tube. And I could shorten this up to about right there, do the same to this, and join the two together. So that way I have the full size bar on both ends. That might be a future modification that I'm gonna do. I'll post a video on it. But for now, I want to get these blinds up just to give me some privacy. As you can see, the sun's going down. Therefore, I'm just going to mount a single bar with the inner bar attached to it for the adjustment. So the way this works is you have your tensioner here that basically applies pressure to the bar so it doesn't pop out. Then you have your adjustment here, which if you loosen this screw up, it allows you to change depth, how far out you need your pull from the wall. And then you also could use this to break this loose, so you don't even have to take it all the way out, just loosen it up. And you could turn it sideways to mount your screws, screw it in quickly, and then you could align it again, tighten it, and it'll lock it in place. There's a detent right here, right above it. It looks like a little ball, as you can see right there. And what that does is when you're straight like this, a little detent ball right there next to the screw aligns in the slot and it keeps it from twisting, okay? Lastly, when you mount this, you have a quick attach and detach feature, okay? So you have this teardrop shape and you have this slot shape. If this is my wall here, what you're gonna do is place this where you want it on the stud, however high you want it. Then you take your pencil and you can mark in the center of here or the top of that. So say I marked it there on the top of that. If I mark it on the top of the teardrop, I could come down here and mark it at the top of that. Now I could go in and put this screw in, put this screw in. And then what that allows me to do is on this teardrop, the screw is going to be down here, and then the screw is going to be right in the center of this, like this, okay? So then I put my screw through and I slide it up, right? Because this is going to be like this, so I slide it up. And when sliding it up here, it'll slide into the mouth of that little slot. And then you could tighten this down and it would adhere it to the wall. And then you tighten it down and it would adhere it to the base. If you ever need to take it off, you don't have to unscrew this screw all the way. You just slightly screw it off, slightly screw this one off, and then you could slide this bracket up and then pull it straight out. And you could take off your bracket in the future. So the way these curtains are measured is the total fabric length, not to the hanging length. So from here to the bottom of this is 63 inches. You're going to lose this distance here because your rod's going to be here, and then however high the mounting hardware is going to be. So this right here, you're looking at 2 inches. Your hardware mounting stuff might lift it up another inch. So you might be a minimum of 2 inches lost all the way up to say 4 inches. So keep that in mind when choosing length as well, is they measure from the very top of the fabric to the very bottom of the fabric, not where the eye hole is to the bottom. Some of the items you're going to need are a tape measure and a stud finder. Tape measure, you should have a stud finder. If you don't have one, you could use a high-powered magnet if you have one of those, or something strong enough to find a head of a nail. So basically what you do, instead of using a stud finder, because these things give you false readings every now and then, a stud finder, basically what you do is you put it on, you zero it out, and then you move it until you find a stud, or until it rings a stud, right? And then once this lights up, then you know there's a stud there. So every 16 inches, you should find a stud at some point. So there's a stud there. And you know there's a stud here because there's your frame for your door. And then, of course, your light switches, the box, usually mount to the side of a stud anyway. So, you know, where there's a outlet, there should be a stud, okay? So that being said, every 16 inches, so we know there's a stud here, so I can measure from here, 16 inches, and there should be another stud. If there's not, then it's probably because, you know, the wall where the window is to the door frame, they might have adjusted and it might not be 16 inches. There could be one that's closer just to make this 16 inches from here to here, or 16 inches from here to here, and then we'll add another one for your door frame or your window frame. So there could be an additional one, okay? But building code, you have to have them 16 on center. So to the center of this stud, there should be another stud to the center. If not, there should be one from here to here, 16 inches, okay? So that's the way that plays out. Now, if you don't have a stud finder and you have a high-powered magnet, all you need to do is take the magnet, place it on the wall, move it around until it sticks. And the reason why it would stick to your wall is because the drywall has to be hammered into a stud. The drywall nails are steel. So when they hammer them in, they hammer them into a stud. So if you take a magnet and go over it and it locks onto the stud, or it locks onto the nail itself, then you know that's where a stud is. And then you could screw your screw directly into there. So there should be a stud somewhere on the edge here and on the edge here, not necessarily directly in the center, okay? So if you can't screw the screws directly into a stud, and say your window's a lot smaller for your curtain, and there's no stud 16 inches, or there's a stud, your window's super huge and there's a stud stay here and a stud here, but you only have 3 brackets, 1, 2, 3. Instead of running the screw directly into drywall, what you get, or what they give you, are these anchors. So you need to drill through your drywall a little bit larger, and then you place this anchor into your drywall, and then you take your screw, and then you could screw it directly into here. This crunches down, so this collapses this way, expanding it, and then therefore locking your mounting bracket into place. So that's another option if you don't have a stud. One thing I want to mention is the instructions do mention you could use a level, right? So you mount one bracket here, you put the bar in, have someone hold it, put a level on top, and then as it goes and zeroes out, then you put your other bracket. The issue I don't like about that, or the reason why I don't like that, is because if your windowsill isn't perfectly level, right? So say it's bent down slightly, and you go and put this thing all the way across, well, when you have your drapes hanging, what's going to end up happening is you're going to see that gap. So you're going to see it go, say, from small to big, right? So you kind of want to compensate slightly or split the difference between this and the top, just so that way it's not apparent that your blinds are, you know, not aligned, even though they're level. So if it's like, say like that, right? This end over here is going to appear bigger, even though, say, my hand's level. So then you're going to compensate a little bit and go maybe something like that. So that way your line of sight, your reference points, look in line or level with your blinds that are draped. Okay. So, you know, you might have to compensate. Also, another thing I don't like about using a level on, say, a rod like this that's not precision, is because if you have this at, say, 120 inches fully extended, what's going to end up happening is when you mount it here and you go over here and hold it, that bar might droop in the middle, or this might be slightly bent because of shipping. So that's why I don't go off a level. I'm just going to use reference lines and get it as close as possible. So I'm going to measure, say, from the ceiling to here, from the ceiling to here, or from the windowsill up, from the windowsill up. So something you could visually see. So if I could see that hard edge, I want that to look in line with that. Or if I could see this hard edge because, say, I put the blinds above it, then I want to make sure my blinds are perfectly spaced throughout that windowsill trim. So since my visual line, this window and this window are in line, this is going to be my reference point here and here. The reason why this window is shorter is because the fireplace, and it's a side window, not a, living room front window. So that being said, we got the same size for both of them. So when these are closed, the drapes are going to be down to here, just so that way they visually look the same. So that's up to you too. I didn't want, short blinds here and then long ones here, because that, it just, to me, didn't make sense. Okay. And then when they open up, of course, you're going to favor one side, you're going to favor one side. So you're not going to really tell. And then when they're closed, of course, you won't see this gap because it's going to cover everything. So it'll appear like there's one big window there. Okay. So that being said, I know there's a stud here right next to the window because they need to be able to screw. There's a stud going this way because they need to be able to mount this window. So it's like a big box frame. That being said, I know there's going to be a stud here, also bracing going straight up. The issue with that is there's a bracing here and a bracing here. So it's split the difference. Therefore, there's no stud in the center. So if I put a screw in there, it's going to push all the way through. So I'm going to have to use an anchor there. These I could screw in directly to the 2x4s. I would recommend you using a magnet because that gives you a definite stud, because it adheres to the 2x4 and the nail that's driven into the 2x4 to hold the sheetrock. And there's a stud there. And what I usually do is, if you buy the magnet stud finder, I'll place it on here, wiggle it around. Once I find a stud, I'll go up, because they could have missed the mark. Usually they don't, just because they're laying sheetrock when, it's all open, so they could see the studs and they know where to cut it, so that way the sheetrock can align. But if they do miss it and that happens to be an issue, at least follow up with it with another locating mark, because there's, in this distance, there should be a minimum of 2 nails, one here, but there could be 3 or 4. So double check and make sure you locate both. Okay, so this is what it looks like there. And then if we go to this side, this is what it looks like here. So all I did was I aligned this edge with the bottom of this. That gave me the height I needed to kind of sit above the trim. And then I just aligned this edge with the edge of this trim, because I know there's a 2x4 right here. Okay, because they need it to screw the frame into to hold the window. Okay, and then yeah, all I did was kick this to the side. I held this even down here, put one screw in at the top up here, and then I set that, pulled it down, leveled it this way, just by aligning this edge with this edge, screwing it all the way in, and then putting this one last. And then now if I need to take it off, all I got to do is loosen this one up, loosen this one up. This whole thing lifts up and slides out. As for how deep I went, what I did to start off with was I slid this bracket all the way up against the wall, screwed this screw down, and the radius here, pushed it out and basically set the depth for me. Okay, if I need to come out because, say, the ends of the balls are too big, I just loosen this up and I could slide it further out. I would just measure from the wall to the end of this, and then do the same for the opposite end to figure out how far out this could go on both sides to make them even. As far as the center one's concerned, I don't have a long span, so I'm not going to put the center one in for now, just because it's designed for a 120-inch window. This is like around half that size, or 140-inch window, whatever the bar length is. This is only 72 inches, so it doesn't need the center one. I'd rather have 2 studs and not have to worry about the anchors pulling out or damaging my wall for now. So that's where that's at. Now let's set the bar on top. So the way I decided to configure this is this piece here is going to be facing the wall. So this is the wall side. And this side here on this side is going to be facing out towards everyone else. So the first one I started off with, I basically pivot it inward, so that way this is facing the wall instead of facing out into public. You got to take off one of the balls just so you could slide it all the way in. I'll do the same for the other one. So I'll add the additional one here, face it in, and then weave it in and out like that. This is what I mean by size of the bar. So the larger bar, as you can see, this is the gap. If you went with the smaller bar, you would have a lot more gap. So decide on the bar that you want. If you went too small, it's going to look a little funky. Okay, so I have them laid out, just barely put them up. Okay, what I did was I left the smaller end on this end, just because when you walk in through the door and stuff, I want you to be able to see the larger side, and that kind of is an illusion that it's smaller. You know, well, it is smaller, but it gives you the illusion that it's larger because of this bar, right? And then what I did was I put this loop on first, set the bar on the other side of the bracket, so that way when you go to close them, it doesn't pull this side with it. It kind of locks it up on the edge. I left an inch from here to here on both sides. I could extend that further if for whatever reason I don't like that this looks like it's too close. I'm gonna let them hang a little bit and actually, you know, stretch out, get in their relaxed position before making any more adjustments. But that's what it looks like now. That's gonna complete today's video on the curtain install. I didn't leave too much details. I kind of explained the overall, just so you're aware of what you're getting into when installing these blinds. It's pretty straightforward if you follow the instructions, but I figured this little briefing kind of ties in the rest of the house project together. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see content like this and other content I'll be posting in the near future, consider subscribing. Until next time, I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.